Hi, and welcome back to Dream Talks. I am super excited, thrilled, and honored to have my dear friend Rachel Hamm with me today. Hey, Rachel.
Hi, John. So good to be with you.
You too. You too. So there's so much that's going on in your life, and it's interesting because I'm always like, how should I introduce Rachel? Because there's obviously, you ran for office, Secretary of State of the state of California. You're a published author. You're an accomplished, what would you say, accomplished media person. Um, you have your own talk show. You're just in the scene. You're just like a person people need to know. And of course, I very rarely meet somebody where I mention your name, especially in our circles, and they don't know who you are. Most people know who you are.
Hmm.
But if anybody asks you, like, how do you describe yourself?
Well, one of the main first things I say, which you didn't say, is I'm a prophetic dreamer, which I would
Yes.
think you, of all people, that'd be like the top of
Right?
your list. I am a big dreamer. I love dreams. I would say I'm passionate about dreams. I love not only my own dreams, but I love hearing other people's dreams. And I have a weird thing where I actually remember people's dreams. When they tell me their dreams, I like walk through the dream in my mind when they're
Mhm.
saying it. And it's like I can picture it as if I were there. And then
Yeah.
I will often remember their dreams better than they do. My kids will do that. I'll say, remember that dream? And I'll explain it. And they're like, I barely remember that. How do you remember that? I'm like, I don't know. It's just a thing with me. I love
That
dreaming.
happens to me too. And sometimes people are like, so there was a staircase. I'm like, the staircase is on the right, right? And they're like, yeah. It's like you can just like God, oh, this happened last night. I was on live dreams and somebody had a dream about glasses. And there were two scenes in the dream, and then a scene in real life where people were wearing glasses that only had one lens. And I'm
Mhm.
like, so the lens they had was on the left, and the one without the lens was on the right, correct? And they're like, yeah, actually. And I'm like, well, I feel like the left has a distorted view, and the right is for truth and seeing what's actually out there. And it wasn't a big political thing, but that was part of it because it was in the area of medicine and education were the two different settings.
Mhm.
So it was a fascinating dream.
I love it.
But you've been dreaming lately.
I have been dreaming lately. Well, I dream like every night,
Yeah.
but I mean, it's occasionally I'll wake up and feel like I don't remember a dream at all, but I almost always remember at least part of a dream. So it was interesting. Last night, I had a dream that I was interacting with a woman named Grace, who I know in real life, and I do not like her.
No grace for grace,
No
huh?
grace for grace. And in the dream, I had total grace for her and was really like, I just felt the Lord's heart towards her and felt very peaceful towards her. Whereas normally in general, her personality kind of grates on me. She's a kind of like a know-it-all who always wants to tell you what to do and it nitpicks you to death. And it's just like, "Nah, get me out of here, So, but in the
Wow.
dream, I had total grace for her. And what's interesting is for the last 2 weeks, no matter how many emails I receive or how many emails I delete or read, every morning when I wake up, the amount of emails that I have is 8,555. 8555, right? And I feel like God is saying that 8 is the number of new beginnings, 5 is the number of grace. And I just felt like he was saying there's a lot of grace for the new beginning that is
Mhm.
coming. And another thing that's been happening to me is every time I look at the clock, I see it an hour ahead. I mean, it's weird, John. I am telling you, I look at a clock
Really?
and it says 7:45, and I look back and it's like, oh, it says 6:45. Why did I think it said 7:45? And that's happening over and over and over. And finally, I'm like, what on earth? Why am I seeing it an hour ahead? Well, I do tend to be a forerunner, and I do think that I am seeing the new beginning that is coming for our nation. And I have a lot of grace that I need right now to do the things God's calling me to do to set the stage and kind of prepare for this new beginning and to help lead other people into the new beginning. But isn't that crazy to have that amount of emails? God often speaks to me through that number. So
Yeah.
I mean, I will wake up and I'll have 11,000, and then the next day I'll wake up and I'll have 4,000. Like the number just completely randomly changes dramatically. I mean, it's really
That's crazy.
supernatural and wild. But to wake up to 8,555 2 weeks in a row, it's a supernatural thing. And,
Yeah.
it may seem small, but it's kind of not. It's amazing. So there's a lot of
Well, it's interesting. I mean, let's analyze this a little bit. First of all, with the time thing, the minutes don't change, it's just the hour, right?
no, it doesn't matter what time it is. Like it could be 3:30 and I look at the clock and see 4:30
Yeah. I hear
or
the hour is late.
mm,
The hour is like, because the minutes don't change, so it's all about the hour. God is talking to you about the hour, and the hour is an hour later when you first look at it. So
mhm,
that's what I hear. I hear the hour is late, which
mm.
is interesting because now I want to go look up the scripture verses where it says the hour is late and see what's in there.
Yeah.
'Cause I think there's
Well,
stuff in some of the prophetic books about the hour being late.
that's interesting too, because some of my dreams in this last week have also been like what I would call kind of like stress dreams, where it's like I need to get to the airport and I can't find the way, or I can't get to my car, I can't open the door. There's just um
Mhm.
it's hard and it's complicated, or whatever. The road is closed, I have to go a different way. And then I dreamed I was going to be on camera and I couldn't find my makeup and I couldn't find the clothing I needed, and I just that kind of thing. And it did feel like there was this pressure of time, like it's coming up, the flight's coming up, the interview's coming up, you don't have the stuff. It's I felt an urgency and also a lot of warfare, and making things complicated, trying to prevent me from getting to where I needed to be to do what I needed to do.
Wow.
So
Almost like you're stuck in slow motion.
yeah, I hate that.
It's
I hate
really
those dreams.
interesting. Yeah, Dana Coverstone, a good friend of mine, just recently had a dream where a lot of his dreams were themed where God would say, brace yourself, brace yourself, brace yourself. Like since he first came on the scene, that was like
Mhm.
a recurring message in his dreams. But he had a dream recently where God said, you're not ready. You're not
Mm,
ready for what's about to happen. The church is not ready for what's about to happen and what's about to be revealed. And
mm,
I personally think, and I've talked to him and some others about that recently, that your angelic visitation, your declarations, your dream, some of the things that you've been declaring that are coming, is part of that. Like when things start to run, heads really start to roll,
mhm.
when God really starts to deal with corruption in America on a mass scale, like people are gonna be shocked, and they're not if they're not in the spirit and grounded in the word and know what God is doing, they're gonna freak out. And so I think it's interesting because for so many years, I mean, how many prophetic words and dreams have we heard where it's like, get ready, get ready, get ready. And I'm like, we're getting ready to get ready to like, when are we going to do something and not just get ready for it? And I
Yeah.
feel like it's go time. Like it's right at that time where it's
Mhm.
like, go now, you know?
Yeah. Well, and if you think about it, with what I have released about, and for people who don't know, we had an angelic visitation at our house where the angel told us that my prayers and decrees had been heard and the date had been set. The death angel will be visiting the capital in the month of May. Now, other people have gotten, there's like, I don't know, maybe John, I don't know if you've
There's like
kept track.
7 other people that have said pretty close to the same thing.
Yeah, no one else has said the capital, and I think that's just
Right.
because each of us are getting the parts we're supposed to get. I don't think it's going to be limited to the capital from
Mhm.
what other people are hearing. But it's a really big deal. If you think about that, as that plays out, that's really going to be an event that is traumatic
Mhm.
for people, again, who are not grounded, who are not really in step with the Holy Spirit, who are not already listening and hearing that this is what's coming. For everyone else, it's going to probably literally be a trauma
Mhm.
that people like us who have been getting ready and are prepared are going to need to step up and really facilitate healing and ministry and help lead, help bring peace and calm to the situation. I was reading about the death angel, because of this message. And, it said that in one day, the death angel killed 70,000 people in when David had taken the census, and he
Wow.
was given three options of punishment, basically because he had not done what God wanted him to do. And he chose that the death angel would war against the people for 2 days. I think 2 or 3 days. I think it was 2. And it said in one day, the death angel killed 70,000 people. And then he turned to take Jerusalem out. He was going to eliminate all the people there through death. And it said that the Lord stopped him, and he didn't do that. So he only killed the 70,000, but he did not destroy Jerusalem. So if you think about if 70,000 people dropped dead in one day, and that was just in Israel, can you imagine how many in the United States are going to likely drop dead? I mean, from what we're hearing, it's people who have knowingly, willingly, intentionally partnered with the spirit of death against God's people. And I think that's going to be people in all kinds of leadership positions, not just governmental.
And I
So
think that's going to
it's
really
hard.
freak people out is
Mhm.
God judges the hearts. And so we
Mhm.
have our idea based on our perceptions. Most of us don't know everybody in Washington or in leadership positions or even all of mainstream pastors. And we think, wow, those are pretty good guys. But
Right.
God knows the hearts, and he knows who's been bought and who's been sold, who in the church, who in leadership, who in, entertainment, in every area. We all have people that we like that may totally be sold out to the wrong side. And when that happens, there may be some people that are judged, unfortunately, or that are dealt with, we should say, that
Mhm.
are not people we would have chosen necessarily. And that's when it's going to feel like things are out of control, because it's not going to be, everybody wants the people that they're opposed to be dealt with, or to be put out of office or this or that. But when stuff like you're saying starts to happen, that's a whole different story.
Yeah, I mean, we had been given some specific names of people who are going to be visited by the death angel, and they are on both sides of the political aisle. So, yeah, I mean, people would assume, oh, only people on the left will will be visited. No,
The right would assume that, and then people on the
on the left would
on
assume,
the
yeah,
left would assume the same of people on the right. But
exactly.
it's really interesting, this message too, about even the emails, a new beginning for grace upon grace upon grace.
Hmm.
And then the dream about having grace for grace.
Hmm.
I think there's moving forward, I think a lot of the people that we choose to walk with or choose to be in unity with are going to be those people that are their lives are marked by grace and love covering a multitude of sins. you
Mm.
know and this leads into that other dream that we wanted to talk about. But that dream, and specifically the one that you're going to share, really kind of, it was at the same time that you shared that dream with me. I was in Moravian Falls with a group of people doing some teaching on spiritual intelligence, and somebody had a dream about Hunter Biden. And it was a dream where there was a very compassionate interaction with this person and Hunter. And, we all were kind of like, well, that's not going to happen. And then we started trying to understand, because there were like boys in the dream, and we thought, well, maybe it was people in the family at different ages. And so we started looking up the history of the Bidens and really trying to understand, okay, who was at what age when this happened, and when did their mom die, and then what happened here. And as we started going through it, it was like compassion and grace entered the room, and we're like, oh my gosh, the
Hmm.
stuff that this guy has been through is ridiculous. I mean, I can't imagine
Hmm.
going through what he's went through his whole life.
Yeah.
And so there was this great amount of compassion, and I think that those that are, the true followers of Christ are really going to see that in a time when God decides, I'm done playing, and you're not going to have these depopulation plans and these human trafficking plans and these, satanistic plans that have pervaded much of society for years. And God is like, we're done with this. And things start happening, and people start being dealt with on a very severe level. I think what needs to mark the body of Christ in that time, in that season, is grace. And I think we got to drop a lot of our own perceptions of, well, I don't like this person because
Yeah.
I think they're an idiot and they're opposed to my favorite people on the political side of the aisle or whatever. And we have to look at them as sons and daughters of God.
Mm-hmm.
And even though they may be judged, man, if we could get to them and we could introduce them to a relationship with Jesus beforehand, or what about their families, or what about those that love those people and maybe misguided, but really followed their leadership and felt that they were good people or were doing well. And now these people feel hopeless and out of control. How can we extend grace in those situations to people who don't look like us, who don't vote like us, who don't think like us, instead of this political divide and this vitriol that's just been part of American society for especially the last 3 years?
Yeah.
I feel like
The
that's
political spirit is just like the religious spirit,
yeah.
but it's very evil. It's not God's way at all. It's not good. It's interesting. I agree with what you're saying. And God had told me that I was going to be surprised by who was visited by the death angel and who was not. And I can tell you that God has given me a sense of compassion towards Gavin Newsom, who is the governor of California, for people who don't know. And he's done horrible things. The state is a disaster. There's nothing positive happening here in the natural in California. I mean, it's just homeless records, drug rates are through the roof. It's just a mess, an absolute mess. Poverty, more people living in poverty here than almost anywhere else. So, he's very liberal, the most extreme liberal beliefs, really. I mean, he's the one who made the announcement inviting everyone who wanted to come have their abortions to come to California. So you would not think that that's someone that I would have compassion for. And yet every time he pops up on my screen, because I'm here in California, so I see all his little press conferences and all his, social media stuff. And every time what I feel is compassion.
Hmm.
It's interesting. That
Wow.
only God could do that, right? Because in the natural, I can't stand anything he's doing. So
Didn't you just post about him?
I don't know, not like in the last week or two, but I mean, probably I have before for sure. He
Yeah.
makes me. He came out and talked about self-medicating, and that we all need to self-medicate with drugs and alcohol and things that just help us cope with life, because life is stressful. And then he self-medicates all the time. Well, I know he does. He's actually a drug addict, an alcoholic, a sex addict. He's got a lot of problems. And
Wow.
so he's being very sincere when he says, I do that. He was talking about the drug centers that we're providing for people to go shoot up.
Hmm.
It's not, what he's saying is terrible. It's terrible.
Yeah.
But only God knows what's in his heart, and only God knows the whole picture. He's the only one. And
Yeah.
so as I surrender to his will, not mine, I have compassion for Gavin Newsom.
That's amazing. Yeah, it's unsustainable leadership, and where we're at is unsustainable and untenable.
Yep.
And I take a lot of courage and a lot of faith during times like this because we know that it's not going to always be this way. I think the hopelessness is when we feel that the extremists who are seeking intentionally to tank this country are winning. And
Mhm.
everything that God is showing us in dreams, even like a dream Chris Reed had last year about the $50 bill, we unpacked that in detail. And what God was showing was there was a interesting juxtaposition between what the news headlines were and what God was doing behind the scenes.
Mhm.
And there was this duality where God and his angelic host would act and something would happen. And then those who were trying desperately to hold on to power and to hold on to money would throw some sort of temper tantrum that would then show up in the newspaper headlines.
Mhm.
And I believe that so much of what we're seeing, like one of the biggest ones that I see is the food shortage thing. Everybody's talking about the food. I absolutely do not believe whatsoever there's going to be a food shortage. I think most of
Mhm.
all of that stuff is manufactured. I feel like most of those stories, they can't even be proven. 100,000 cows died today in an explosion in a sheet metal building. Like, are you freaking kidding me? Like, who buys this stuff? Who believes this stuff is even happening? And what God has told us is like, no, these are fear tactics because
Mhm.
they want to be able to control what's happening and control the narrative. And a huge part of it is to be able to distract from all of the fronts that they're losing on and how they're losing money and how they're losing power. And
Hmm.
so I think that's interesting. I feel like the evil in America is in pretty much full retreat. And the media won't tell you that because a lot of the media, if not all of the media, is controlled by some of these forces. And so they put these news stories out there to pretend like, oh, well, this is happening. And, this lawsuit against Fox News and that, all these things, there's a lot of people that are cheering, thinking that the voices of the right and the voices of good are being shut down. But I don't see that happening behind the scenes at all. What are your
Mhm.
thoughts?
I agree. I agree. And even I don't know if you've heard about the talk about how our meat, the animals are going to be vaccinated. And so, to not eat meat. Well, the globalist agenda, they don't want us to eat meat. So I'm putting two and two together
Mhm.
and saying, wait a second, I think they might be putting out this message of, oh, the animals are going to be vaccinated, so you can't eat any meat. As far as they're putting out the message of the animals being vaccinated, so that our side of the equation puts out the message of don't eat any meat. I don't know if you've heard that or not, but
Mhm.
that's something
Yeah.
happening right now. And there might be some element of truth in it, but I'm just putting out I'm looking at it kind of like stepping back a little and going, wait a second, they're the ones that keep trying to get us to not eat meat. This something isn't adding up. I think
Mhm.
maybe that's not true. They're just trying to get us to not eat meat. So I don't know. I think that it's a really good time to pray for wisdom and discernment to know what is the Lord actually saying when we see so many loud voices and hear so many loud voices speaking and saying all kinds of different things. We've got to be able to weed out and assess, well, what is God saying? Because God can say, yep, they are being vaccinated. And when you pray over your food, guess what? It's not going to touch you. Eat it. Right. So it doesn't matter. All that matters is what is God saying? And
Well, any of the ranchers that I've talked to, they're like, not only no, but hell no, we're not doing any of that. Like, I haven't found a person yet. I mean, maybe there are some large, food production companies that are like, yeah, we're going to pump poison into the American people. But the vast majority of people, certainly hometown farms and stuff, they're like, we absolutely will not comply with this whatsoever.
yeah.
So it's interesting too, because I feel like the right, and in particular the Christian right, and again, not to segment or divide, but I feel like we feel like the enemy has never evolved. We feel like the message that they're heralding is only on CNN. And it's like, you don't think they can start a Patriots for Jesus group on Telegram and then put the stuff out there and watch it spread like wildfire? Because almost everybody on either
Yep.
side of whatever political argument you're on, we don't
Mhm.
think we can be deceived. We think we're in the know. We think we know more. Well, we know not to watch the news. They're not pumping all this disinformation out through the news anymore. It's all on Telegram. And the thing that's really interesting to me, a lot of it is friends of mine. It's people that I know to be good Christian people who don't do their research, who don't follow up, who don't hold information like intelligence and even in the prophetic, and they just say whatever they want to say. And most of all the bad news that I see of what's going on in the world all comes from Christians. It's all of
Mm.
these Christians who want to expose the latest drag queen this or the Grammys that, or I wouldn't know about half of this stuff if
Mhm.
it wasn't for Christians who want to put that stuff out there constantly. And like 90% of what they're posting is yeah, and I know I think they're trying to good-hearted bring awareness. We don't
Mhm.
need awareness, because when you post that and when you repost that, what you're doing is you're coming into agreement with it. Even though
Mhm.
you're saying, well, hold the line and we need to not let this happen. And you're constantly putting out and glorifying the wickedness of the left. So let's stop doing that and let's decide what is the narrative that God is saying, and let's put that into the general public, and let's say, no, this nation has a hope and it has a future, and there will be restoration, and there will be accountability in government, and there will be judgment for the wicked, and the corrupt will fall. And let's put those things out there, because especially in the dream world and the prophetic world, and this is what we're seeing. God's not talking to me in dreams about drag queens, and he's not talking about this and that. And
Yeah.
what
It's
he's
true.
talking about is heart issues. Like, how would your heart feel if Hunter Biden suddenly got saved? Like, what's the church that he could go to? Who are the people that are weeping between the porch and the altar for him with
Okay,
no
so
understanding of his life?
I have to say, so, I told you before we started, I had 2 little clip dreams that I could share.
Yeah.
One was the grace one. I have to share the other one because of what you just said. So the other one was that I was looking at my phone and the Telegram app was open.
Oh,
And I
really?
was reading some words on it. And when I woke up, I couldn't remember what the words were, but I was reading some words and then something came into my view that made it where I couldn't see. And it was like, it was blurry. And so I backed away. And as I backed away, it was a rat, a large rat had walked onto the screen and was sitting there like eating a cracker, blocking. It was on. And I said in the dream, I said, there's a rat on Telegram.
Yeah.
And that was it.
Yeah.
Isn't that interesting?
Well,
Because you said twice,
that is,
Telegram.
yeah, out of all the ones I could have mentioned, Telegram.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
Yeah. And
interesting
I don't really
because
go on Telegram. So
I
it
don't
wasn't.
go on it hardly at all. I do occasionally. There's one or two people that I follow that I know are actually the people that post, but there's so many people that, with what we do, we work in the prophetic and in dreams on what we call an intelligence level. We do intelligence level analysis. And so I got to be careful anything that I share or say because there's a lot of people who, when they look at the stuff that comes out from me and my organization, they're like, well, they have a higher standard because I'm not
Mhm.
saying whatever God tells me. We're not taking every prophecy, every dream, every download and blasting it all over YouTube because that's not wisdom. And when people do that, it's kind of interesting because a lot of times they're not getting the interpretations right. It's like God hasn't really told them the interpretation. What they're doing is they're putting it out on the wire, and
Mhm.
people like us are capturing it, and then we're analyzing it, and we're being like, that's not, everybody thinks it's literal. It's not literal at all. Like people are missing what the message is, but the message probably isn't for the general public. The message is for those that really want to go deep and figure out what God is saying. But yeah,
Mhm.
I think to think that the lines of communication that we've used haven't been compromised would be absolutely idiocy on our part. To think that there aren't groups on Telegram that are posting this stuff, and then the problem is people are resharing it over and over and over again who haven't done their homework. Like if you can't personally verify something, like 10,000 cows died in Kansas yesterday. If you can't verify that those are actually cows, that they're actually in Kansas, that they're actually dead, and that it was actually yesterday, you're part of the problem because what they're doing is people are arguing because they're saying, well, how can people raise cows in Mexico? Because it's a lot hotter in Mexico than it is Kansas. And they've already distracted you because now you're arguing. It's like the Will Smith slap on the at the Oscars. No matter what side you're on, if you give any life to that argument, you are actually amplifying distraction. And so what we need to do is completely ignore that, not even comment that we're ignoring it, not say, well, I think it's fake. Well, I think it's real. Well, I think this. Well, I think, and then you get into this endless discussion. And it's what scripture talks about fruitless discussions. And none of this helps the country. None of this moves anybody forward. It's this tabloid style. And unfortunately, I see this in the Christian world. There's almost like the prophetic gossip channels where people get on now and they're talking and commenting on every single thing that the world is putting out in the news. And let's talk about this person's life and this person's life. And I think some of that can be good because it's people that are coming to faith or that are turning their lives around. But a lot of that is just people that are, it feels like people want to be relevant. And so they're commenting on everything that the news is putting out. And when we do that, then earth sets the agenda. The news people set the agenda on what we talk about. And instead, let's talk about what is God saying. And this is why we live in the area of dreams and the prophetic. What is God saying in our dreams? What can we put out? What is not intelligence grade? So we don't want to share this with everybody. Like you probably haven't published the list of names that God has shared with you are going to be visited by the
Yeah.
death angel.
Not even talking about it at all. Yeah.
Yeah, because that's not for people to know. What is to
Mhm.
know is we need to be in a season of grace and we need to be prepared and ready and we need to be able to stand firm and give an answer when anybody asks about the hope that is within us.
And not be offended by God when he has grace for someone that we find offensive.
That we don't have grace for.
Right. I mean, I think that like the whole Gavin Newsom thing, I think is probably kind of predictive of what God is saying. Like from the world's view, this is a bad person. From my view, I know the whole story. I know that all the details, right? He knows what makes up every single element of why we do what we do. And that's why when I began the decrees, it was those who have knowingly, willingly, in other words, they're not fractured by trauma and they have parts that Satan is manipulating. No, they have knowingly, willingly, intentionally partnered with the spirit of death. Only God knows who's done that.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
and thankfully we don't have to be the judge or jury on that one. I'm glad that
Yeah.
God's going to deal with that, because man, that's those people are not. Anyway, I think they
Do you want me to share the Obama dream?
share the Obama dream. Yes,
Okay.
please.
All right. So I was at a conference at a hotel, and it was a political conference, and it was covering different elements of being president. And I knew in the conference suddenly that I really needed to study up on the economy before I was president. And so I was like, okay, it's the economy, stupid, right? Got to study up on the economy. I don't really know about the economy. And I was thankful. I was like, Lord, thank you that you gave me this opportunity and you brought it to my awareness that I need to learn about the economy. Well, then it switches from being in the like kind of convention where we're learning about this stuff to being with a group of people who I was talking with. They were all conservatives. I didn't know them in real life, but they were familiar. Like it was kind of like, patriot groups or whatever. It was like that. So we're talking and a guy says, hey, I got a hotel room for us to hang out and relax in between the convention sessions. Why don't we go hang out there? So we all said, okay, great. So we walk to the room. And as everyone comes in the room, I turn, and the last people to come in the room were Barack and Michelle Obama. And I was really like, what? First of all, why are they even here? Why are they coming into this hotel room? This is confusing, like very confusing. So I go and I sit on the bed and then kind of laid back on the bed. And the various patriot people were in there. And as they saw Barack and Michelle, it was clear, it was kind of like they were like, why are they here? And no one would talk to them. And people even started leaving because they were there. And I felt a lot of compassion where I was like, ugh, people are being so rude. And I know that it is kind of weird that they're here. And I don't even know why they're here, but I'm going to, just be friendly to them. So I started talking to them, and they came over to where I was then. And we're like by the bed, and Michelle kneeled down on the floor and leaned against the bed. And I was talking with her, and Barack was standing. And then he said he had to go to the bathroom, and he goes to the bathroom. And at this point, as kind of this little transition is happening, everyone's leaving to where it's just me and them in the hotel room. And Barack goes into the bathroom as Michelle and I are talking, and I can hear that he's ill in there. Like he's like, I don't want to be, like descriptive, but I can hear things that are letting me know his stomach was not feeling well. So I felt bad for him. Like I felt very much, I could feel the humanity of them, that they are people, like regardless of what they have done or who they are people that have upset stomachs, And so I felt his humanity, and I felt compassion for his humanity. Well, then as I'm talking to Michelle, I see like sweat beads on her face, and that she was very hot. And I said, oh, you're hot. And she got out a handkerchief and was dabbing her face. She said, yeah, I'm so hot. I'm always hot. And kind of, that's just how it is for me or whatever. So then Barack comes back out, and I might slightly be getting this order a little bit off, but I'll just tell it as opposed to reading it. So Barack comes back out, sits on the bed, and Michelle is still like kneeling on the floor. And I say to her, there's so much that we disagree about, but I bet there's a lot that we do agree about. Like, I think we could probably find common ground and find things that we agree about. And then for whatever reason, I asked her, what do you think about the transgender issue? And she said, well, I think that a lot of those people are really tormented. And I think that if there's an adjustment they can make in their life, that alleviates that torment, I think we should let them do that. And I thought in the dream, first of all, I don't agree with supporting transgenderism because I think it's coming into agreement against God's plans for this person. So I'm like thinking that. And then I thought, but I can understand what you're saying. And I can understand that you're coming from a place of compassion towards them. And that's why you've reached the things, your views on the subject. That's why you've
This is
reached.
all in the dream.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
And I knew she was coming from a place of compassion. Well, then I had the thought, oh my goodness, I forgot that a lot of people think that Michelle is a transgender person. And I hadn't thought about that before. I thought, why did I ask that question? That's like such a controversial thing. She probably knows, that people think she's transgender. And I don't know, is she not? Is it a man, is it a woman? And I was like wondering if I just created like controversy by asking that question. And thought, okay, well, let's just change the subject. So we began talking about some other things that we found that we could have in common. Like we want children to be safe, and we were just kind of like saying some things that we had in common. And then I said, hey, I'm so sorry. I just realized, I'm laying on the bed. There's plenty of space here. Do you guys want to lay down too? And they said, yeah, that would be great. So I scooted over, and Barack laid right next to me, and Michelle laid right next to him, and our elbows kept hitting. And I thought, and I know I said, is it okay that our elbows keep rubbing? And they're like, yeah, it's fine. And I'm like, okay. So we continued to talk for a little bit, and then I said that I needed to go, that I had a long drive, and that I needed to get home, and we needed to leave. So we are walking out to our cars, and they get into a really raggedy, poor car that looked like it was like barely running. And Michelle takes the keys from Barack and gets into the driver's seat, and Barack gets in the passenger seat. Well, I then realized a couple of things that I wanted to tell them. So I go up to the car, and Barack rolls down the window, and I said, I wanted to let you know, my friend John Redenbow lives just right up the street. So even though I'm leaving, if there's something you need, I'm sure he would be able to help you. And I can connect you guys if you want. And so like, okay, thank you. I said, and also, we just left that hotel room, and I could feel that they had no money in the dream. And I knew it was like they had nowhere to stay, and they had this broken down car, and they had nothing, And so I said, that hotel room is already paid for, and no one's going to be sleeping in it. This guy had just rented it so that we could hang out in there for a little while, but no one's going to sleep there tonight. So you could sleep there if you wanted to. And they said, yes, that would be great. Thank you. That would be very helpful. And they were going to stay. So I said, well, let me go get a key for you. So I turned to go to the hotel lobby to get a key. And I realized, oh, I don't have a key to it. And my name is not on the room. I didn't rent the room. So I don't know if I can get a key. And then I thought, well, I'll have to just go and ask, and it will be the favor of the Lord if I get a key. So I'll go try. And I woke up.
Wow.
And in the dream, both when Barack was in the bathroom and when I was talking with Michelle, I felt a lot of compassion towards them. Again, where it's like, and I know that people are probably like freaking out. They're like, no, they're bad. Don't have compassion. Like, I know. I can feel it that people are thinking that, but I can tell you that it felt like he was giving me his heart towards them. And it was almost a reminder of, actually, like, even if they've done the most horrible things you could possibly think of, he still really does love them. Like, he really does. And then, John, as you know, I then a couple days later was at Mar-a-Lago and in a situation where I was with a person where that dream was very important. The moment this person started speaking to me, that dream immediately, it was like everything that dream had deposited into me came up, and I needed it for that situation. I needed God's heart towards that person. And it's a person that every single person would know if I mentioned the name. And there's a lot we would disagree about with this person. And what I felt as they were speaking was God's heart towards them. And guess what? They poured their heart out to me. Why? Why would someone that you really are on very different ends of, very big issues on why would someone like that pour their heart out to you? I mean, I'm talking about like deep, deep things of their heart pouring out. It's because I had God's heart towards them. I had a opportunity with this person because I had God's heart towards them. The filter I was seeing them through was God's heart, as opposed to my preconceived ideas, my own opinions about things, my judgments, my yada, 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 right? What I
Well,
saw,
for the sake of my audience, they're going to kill me if I don't ask. I already know who it was, but can you share who it was?
I do not. I'm going to keep that private.
Okay,
I
that's good. I
just
saw
really,
other people that took pictures with that person, and
yeah,
so
but
I
I
don't know
didn't
if
post any of them, and
okay,
I untagged myself
we
from
totally
things.
respect that, but my
Yeah,
people would be like, "You didn't even ask her," so I had
I
to
know.
ask.
I understand. I understand. But and because they poured their heart out to me, I want to respect that. I want to honor
Yeah,
that,
absolutely.
and it was just so beautiful. Think about that. Your community are the dreamers, right? They care about dreams. God prepared me for that moment with one dream, and it was perfect. It
Mm.
was exactly precisely what I needed. And it deposited something into me that totally shifted things for me to prepare me for that moment.
Yeah, that's incredible. That's incredible. I
Yeah.
was so shocked, but in a good way when you sent me the pictures, and I was like, "Oh my gosh, this is," and then there's that thing that your stomach starts to turn like, I don't know how I feel about this,
Mhm.
not that I need to have an opinion on it one way or another, but if I had the opportunity to sit down with that same person, would I argue? Would I try to say this or that? Or would I have compassion and treat them with the dignity of a human being, no matter who they are, and then begin a conversation or a discourse, which I think is
Well,
what
but
you're
that's
doing.
interesting because one of the specific things they said was the evangelical community won't even have a conversation with me.
Mhm,
And they were crushed about that.
mm.
It's like, can you just hear me out? Would you have a conversation with me?
Wow.
It was, yeah.
Wow. So you talked to this person for a while.
Yes.
Wow, that's amazing. That's so
Mhm.
cool.
Mhm.
This dream is a powerful dream. It's a really interesting dream, and I think I shared with you, I've had 2 or 3 dreams in the last probably 3 or 4 months where I've sat down and had, like, dinner with Barack Obama,
Mm.
and it wasn't again, I think that the tenor of the news media, though it's not all the news media, and kind of the positioning on the divisive side, that the division isn't from God. You know, there's a
Mm.
separation that he does of sheep and goats,
Mhm.
but the divisive vitriol towards one another, I don't believe that's from God at all. And when we get on those sides, there are certain people that we just automatically label because of association, or, we
Mhm.
don't know those people. We don't have any idea if any of the stuff we've heard about them is even true, but they've been painted that way. And most of the knowledge that we have is by stuff that we've heard in the media from people who we think are trusted sources, who are not verifying the sources of information with these
Mhm.
stories. They're just putting stuff out there, like saying this person is, claims this gender, or this person swings this way sexually or whatever. And we have no clue,
Mhm.
but I think it's super interesting that in these 2 dreams, I was sitting down and I was having a really good, yeah, a conversation almost like I'd have with you. Well, I was
Mhm.
really enjoying having dinner with Barack Obama and
Mm.
discussing things. And there was one point that I brought up a dream that I kind of revealed a plan that he had, and I said it, kind of called him out on it, and he got mad and got up and walked away. And then I immediately brought it back, like, you know what? But what if you did this? And what if you, and he actually came and he sat back and re-engaged in discussion.
Hmm.
And I was like, why did I do that in the dream? Because in a lot of cases, being bullheaded and strong, we would I want to give them a piece of my mind, and I'm going to tell them what for. And that's great, but that doesn't lead to a closer relationship with God. It doesn't
Mhm.
lead to a further understanding of who they are as a human being. And I'm not saying partnering with evil, but what I am saying is look at the example that Daniel had to Nebuchadnezzar. Like, if you understand what Daniel went through when he was taken into captivity, probably most of his family was killed. He was turned into a eunuch. He was forced into servitude. He was forced the culture of the Babylonians upon him for 3 years to study. And then he was brought before the king, and he's like, man, you're good looking and smart. I like you. You're going to be in my court. And then when the king is trying to kill everybody that he's appointed to that position, Daniel, out of compassion, first, the Bible says, first out of compassion for himself and his friends, he went and he sought time. But then when he came back, it was compassion for all of the wise men. So even when he first started, it was to save his own life when he first began to seek God. But then he came back. And so anyway, it's interesting that you're rubbing elbows with people in very high places that are on what people would think would be the complete opposite of the political spectrum of where you are. And not only are you rubbing shoulders with them, but you're reclining, you're relaxing, you're in a restful, comfortable place. You're laying on a bed which doesn't mean anything weird, or it doesn't mean, what it means is you're comfortable in being at rest with them. And I think there's a lot of people that actually disqualify themselves. And there's a lot of well-known people, I believe, pastors, preachers, prophets, evangelists, people that we would know that disqualify themselves from having any type of political position or position in the lives of certain people because of the things that they've said publicly and because the way that they act. And they'll probably never get the opportunity to sit down and meet with these people because God could not trust them to treat them first like a son or daughter of God, and to disregard all of their preconceived notions and to just love them in that moment as somebody that's having a stomach ache, or somebody that's having hot sweats, or somebody that doesn't have a place to stay for the night, and they have human needs just like you and I do.
Okay, I want to pause real quick and ask you from an interpretation point of view, because I have to go. I was supposed to go 5 minutes ago. Okay, do you think that the reason that Michelle got into the driver's seat is because she's going to run for president? We were at a convention.
Yeah. No, I don't.
Okay.
I don't. And the reason is because we don't have time to unpack it. We've had dreams about Michelle Obama. And one dream was about her actually bringing, and I'm going to tell you the dream. We don't have time to get into the interpretation, but I think somebody's riding in the back of like the Beast, the limo. I think they're with Trump, and Michelle Obama gets in the back seat with them. And she's got a box of papers, and she's like, here's everything you need. Everything that you said we did. Here's all the proof. I'm getting divorced. I'm done. And totally becomes a turncoat. So I think that would probably wreck if that's true. Now, I don't take that dream at face value, and I don't know that that dream is actually representative of Michelle Obama, but it's a strong enough thing that I don't know that she would ever run for president. And with what's happening, the direction that we believe the nation is moving, where God is restoring things, where righteousness and justice will prevail, where God is dealing with corruption. I'm not judging the Obamas. I'm not saying they're corrupt. There's a lot of stuff that I don't have information on, and so I won't say those things. But I just think it might be untenable for people that have been part of the past of what's happened politically to be able to move forward and have much of a career.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I don't know if I agree. I think she might run for president, but we'll have to just leave it at that.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you so much for being on today, and give Zeke my best, and we'll talk again soon.
Okay. God bless you, and God bless you to your audience. Thank you for watching, and thank you for dreaming. Keep dreaming.
Amen. All right. Awesome. Always so great to spend time with Rachel. She's just such a blessing, and we love having her on. So glad that she can make time in her busy schedule today to be with us. Go Zeke on the new job. And thank you all for tuning in. I do want to say as a disclaimer that we are talking about dreams. So we are not judging these people. We are not putting our thoughts or our implications on them. There are rumors out there where we talked about rumors related to Michelle Obama, Barack Obama. We are not subscribing to those rumors. My opinion on those rumors is really irrelevant. The point is we're coming together, we're having a discussion on dreams because we're wanting to understand what we believe God is saying through dreams. And if we could say anything about the dream that Rachel just shared, it's about positioning our hearts to be at rest and to rub elbows with people that don't think like us, don't look like us, don't act like us, may not know God, may not be politically persuaded in our direction whatsoever. And if we can be comfortable in situations with those people, we may have the favor of God on our life, that we may be able to stand before kings and queens and give an answer to the hope that lies within us. We may be the person, if we can get over our preconceived notions and the divisive political and religious spirit that has been rampant in America today, we may be the ones that could lead somebody to Christ. We've had multiple people in very, very high government positions have sent me dreams about people like Rachel's dream, where they believe they're going to have the opportunity to lead people to the Lord at the highest levels, people that most right side Christians don't like and don't agree with and don't think are even redeemable. But it comes down to, what is our heart like? And in this next season, and in the season that we're entering into, it is very, very, very critical for us to have grace upon grace upon grace. It's a new season. Remember, 8555, for a new season, a new time to have grace upon grace upon grace. And so that was one of the themes today. Thank you for joining us. Really appreciate our audience. So many have asked if we could have Rachel back, and so we had her back, and I'm sure we'll have her back again. She's one of our favorites and a dear friend. But thank you for tuning into Dream Talks, and keep dreaming. We'll see you next time.